so the first thing I want to ask you guys is to imagine a scenario for me really quickly. All right, so this is you. Looks really familiar. And this is your friend. And you guys are really excited because you guys go to watch a movie. But without telling you, your friend decides to bring a complete stranger along. Okay? So right before the movie starts, your friend goes and decides to do the worst possible thing. They go to the washroom. Okay? And they leave you alone with this complete stranger. But you, though, being the nice person you are, decide to strike up a conversation with them. So this is how it goes. Hey, how's the weather? They respond, I mean, it's all right, I guess. Very quickly, you realize, you know what, I have nothing in common with this person, okay? And you find yourself in that place that we all hate, but we know very well. Yes, my friends, I'm talking about awkward silence. Okay, and when I'm talking about awkward silence, or anyone for that matter, we all kind of seem to know what it is, right? It seems pretty intuitive. But what is it? Okay, awkward silence, well, for the purpose of my talk anyways, is the result of disruptions in conversation. So these disruptions can be anything. So cutting people off, long pauses where they don't really belong, and just speaking at the same time. So it's safe to say, you know what, I don't really like awkward silences, and I don't think you guys do either. But what we do like is flow in our conversations. So when I'm talking about flow, I'm talking about the smooth transition from one person speaking to the next. And the reason why we like this is because we feel like we're being understood. We're getting this sense of social validation. Now, there are 3 ways that we increase conversational flow. The first way is vocal intensity, so match how the person is talking to you. So if they're speaking super loud, you might also want to scream back, right? Pause length, so pausing where appropriate. And the last one is language. So I don't mean if the person's speaking English, you speak English. I'm talking about if the person is speaking formally, so let's say you're talking to a prof, you might also want to match that tone as well. So with all of this talk about flow and awkward silences, it really should come to you that it's not a surprise that awkward silence actually ruins our relationships. Specifically, it ruins weak relationships, so with people that we don't know. And it comes back to this idea with these flow disruptions, awkward silences, what ends up happening is we get this feeling like we're not being understood in this conversation. So really quickly, let's go back to our case study. All right, so the movie's done. Your friend goes home, you're kind of happy about that, or the person you don't know, they go home, and you're finally left alone with your friend, and you're super amped because you know what? You loved the movie. You're like, man, it was so good, the characters were funny, the plot was great, and your friend cuts you off, they say, you know what? I hated it. And you find yourself again in the same situation you were not too long ago. 2 for 2, another awkward silence in one night. So you're driving home, you're like, man, this is so awkward. But you come to the conclusion, you're like, you know what? It's not so bad. This doesn't really change my friendship with that person. What research will actually tell you is that it actually made your relationship even stronger. That one awkward silence benefited your friendship. And if you're anything like me, when you read this, you're probably like, wait, what? That makes no sense. It has the term awkward in it. How does that have any kind of benefit to me? And the answer, friends, is what we call the availability heuristic. And we're talking about the availability heuristic. We're talking about a mental shortcut which relies on previous experiences to make these snap judgments. So let's go back. Okay, so you had an awkward silence with your friend. You can't get that social validation or understanding from the conversation. That's long gone now. But you can still get that social validation from the availability heuristic. So what ends up happening is you're like, okay, you know what, one awkward silence, but through the availability heuristic, you're able to find a bunch more experiences where you were being understood, where you did get that social validation. And in turn, what ends up happening is this kind of active reflection makes you see that, you know what, that awkward silence in the grand scheme of things is nothing. And my friendship with this person is strong, which is a good thing. So now you're probably wondering, okay, so like that's really cool, but now what? Are you gonna give me some kind of psychological mechanism to avoid awkward silences forever? The answer to that is no, unfortunately. And we can see this through our case study. So just to recap, in case you forgot, you had an awkward silence with the person you don't really know. You then had an awkward silence with the person you do know. So it's safe to say you've had a rough night. But with that being said, don't let these awkward silences define your relationships. Specifically your new ones, right? So just like what we said before, how awkward silence with your friend isn't representative of your whole friendship, it's not representative of all your future relationships with other people, right? Who's to say that you won't have a lot more positive experiences with social validation, with understanding with other individuals? So now I've kind of reached the end of my talk. To be honest, I don't really know what else to say, but that's okay because that's what awkward silences are anyway. All right, thanks for listening.